Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Welcome to podcast number 208. Today, we're going to try something new and different and exciting. I'm kind of excited about it. We are going to actually have recorded questions. So on the website, michaelquarles.com, on the right-hand side of every page, there's a little button that says, Ask Mike a Question, something like that. Rather than typing your question in and sending it in via email, you can just jump on that thing and ask the question. Now remember, you have to ask politely. We can't have any profanity, and we're going to use it, so if you don't want to say your name, don't say your name. But it's a great way, an easy way, a fast way to have a question asked so we can answer it. You don't have to sit there and wonder how to, put something to paper, and you're just going to ask. And if you're like me, I love audio responses and audio emails. They're so much easier than typing. So we're gonna experiment today. If you guys like it, join in some more. Here we go. First question.
Hey, Michael. My name is Charles. I just had a quick question. I was wondering, how would you check to see any existing liens or anything on the property? If the seller is being straightforward with you about everything, do you just let the title company handle that and take their word for it and just try to close it out? Or is there any way that you can do some diligence and before you go to your buyer with the contract and, just to make sure that the seller is giving you the right information up front before you try to wholesale the house? Thanks again, Mike, for everything you do. You're a big help. Thanks.
Great question, Charles. If I were wanting the first cursory review of the title on the property, I would call customer service at my closing or my escrow company and ask them to pull the deeds against or all the liens against the property. So I'd give them the APN number or the address, and I'd have them do a cursory pull of those documents and have them email them to me. That would take them all of 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes. Yes, I could go down to the county and I could research using the county's database. However, my closing company, my escrow company, and I use a few of them, and they all have access to the recorder's office electronically. And so it's pretty simple. Now, one of the questions you ask is prior to you getting the contract. The only time that I'm going to really need this information is if for some reason I'm believing the house might be in a stage of foreclosure. And in that case, because we have foreclosure laws that we have to abide by, in that case, then I'll make that phone call. Other than that, it's the seller's responsibility to give us clear title. Now, even if we are buying it subject to the existing loan, our contract calls for clear title with the exception of a dollar value to that sub-2 loan. So it's the responsibility of the seller. So if I find something out, or if the closing company, escrow company, title insurance company, they find something out, there's a personal lien, mechanics lien, back taxes, what have you, that is, again, that whatever they find out that needs to be paid, the arrearages, whatever it is, that is the responsibility of the seller. And I'm going to hold them to that responsibility. So I don't really spend a lot of time trying to figure out if a seller can sell it to me or not. Now, during my presentation, one of the statements I'm going to make is, as I'm making my presentation, as I'm starting my negotiation or within my negotiation with the seller, I'm going to say one of the nice things about my program is I pay cash when I buy your house today. When you sell your house today, when we agree on a price today, you can consider your house sold, not only sold, but sold to somebody who can afford to buy it, because myself, just like you, I sell houses, and there's nothing more frustrating than to see a deal break down in escrow because the buyer couldn't qualify for the loan, or they didn't realize that back taxes and child support payments attach to them, and they have to have those things paid before they can buy something. Much like if you had back taxes or child support payments that you had to pay, you don't have anything like that, do you? So I'm making that statement right in the beginning or during my presentation with them, and asking them to talk about it. When I go over my agreement that I have with them, I'm going to explain what delivering clear title means. And so I'm not going to try and put myself in a situation down the road where I find out that I can't buy it because it's over encumbered, or there are issues that the seller can't satisfy. So I'm trying to knock those things out of the way in the very beginning and not waste my time. So I'm not going to do a lot of due diligence looking at title prior to me getting a contract. But great question. Thank you for asking it. Let's hear another one.
Hey, just a quick question. Great episodes, by the way. They really helped me out a lot. In terms of wholesaling a property like this, so I'm listening to the seller, and what if they think that you're going to purchase the house and give them a check like tomorrow, the minute they sign the contract? How do you deal with that? So what do you say after they sign the contract and you have to go out and get a buyer or something? For my instance, in my case, I would have to go out and get a buyer after putting the property under contract. So what do I tell them after they sign and they say, okay, when do I get my check? And do I say, well, let me go out and talk to some investors? Or how does that go, I guess? I guess from that point, after Ryan gets the contract assigned and emailed back to you guys, what is her conversation with that client after? Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for it. When you start negotiation with your seller, one of the questions we're going to want to ask them is, when did you want your property to be sold? So naturally, when they sign their agreement, it's the beginning of the sale of their property. But when do they want it to be closed? So we're going to ask them the date in the future. Some people will want their money in 15 days. Some people will hopefully get it, want it in 7 days. Some people will say, hey, I can't move out for 2 months. So we're going to ask them what they need, what they want, just so we know we can have clarity. And the reality is, we're going to set that at 60 days. In today's marketplace, it takes about 60 days for the closing company to do everything that they need to do. We'll try to get it done sooner if we need the money sooner than that. And in the meantime, what's going to happen is we're going to meet down at the closing company tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. I'll need you to bring with you your valid ID or driver's license. So there'll be some forms that have to be notarized, one of which is the memorandum of contract that tells the world that you sold me the house and I am buying the house. They're going to ask you to fill out what we call a statement of identity. And what a statement of identity is to find out any facts that are against your person. So if you have a highly unusual name, it's pretty simple. If you have a very common name like John Doe or something, it takes a little longer. And of course, that's all up to how fast you can get that information back to them and how fast they can do their research. Some of the things that they're looking for are loans, liens, judgments, those kinds of things. And it does take a little time. If you have a mortgage or a loan on the property, they'll request a payoff from your lender, and that takes time as well. And as soon as we can get this done, we will, but we like 60 days just because the industry seems to like that time frame. And if that will work for you, let's go ahead and sell me your house today, and I'll buy it today and have you your money just as quick as possible. So we're not giving them their money when we agree to buy their house, because they have to still go through the steps of proving that they can sell us the house, that there's actually that equity base, that they don't owe any money if they said they didn't, or how much they owe if they said they owed money. So you'll have time to go ahead and sell it. Think about not wholesaling it as your first line of defense kind of thing. I think that should be one of the last things you think about. We want to find a buyer, and we know 75% of the buyers are using real estate professionals. So that's the easiest way to get a house sold. And if you go through the coaching program, we'll show you how to have the seller give you authorization to start selling it immediately, and through a real estate professional, so that you can make as much money as you possibly can make. However, at the end of the day, if that doesn't work for you, wholesaling is absolutely a great backup. It's better than not making any money at all, and we'll fall forward that way. But I appreciate the question. And just to recap one more time, you don't have to give the money the day of or the day after. It's the period of time that you set within your agreement. And just in case you didn't know, if you go onto the site, you can actually download my 3-page contract. So it'll help you as well. And there's paragraphs in there that'll explain the time limit and the time frames. But great question. Thank you.
Hi, Michael. Big fan of the show. Big fan of all the help you give to new investors, and love your yellow letters. I have a question. I am training an assistant. She's been with me for about 5 months now, and she's been with me on about 3 deals now. On the last deal, we had a house that should have it has an ARV of $290,000. We got it under contract for $180,000. Now it's beat up. It's been a rental for probably 20, 25 years. Needs a new roof. Everything's worn and ugly. Nothing that can't be fixed, but it's got some wear. Anyway, in a discussion with a realtor she knows, the realtor seemed to indicate that at that price level, what we were doing could be considered unethical or shady somehow. And that kind of threw her back, and honestly, she has some questions about it. And I was wondering if you could address that in your next podcast. And also, I understand as a realtor, there are ethical issues surrounding that too. Maybe if you could also elaborate on that as well, on the ethical implications of buying a similar type of deal as a licensed realtor. If you could weigh on that particular aspect of it as well, I'd really...
Interesting question. Thanks for asking it. If we look at this, and I want to talk about the ARV and the contract for a second, with all the work that is required to be performed, we've got to be conscientious of, and I don't believe we should do the standard ARV, times this minus that kind of thing. I think we should always be looking at property in the value that it sits, or at the value it sits. So just because it'll be worth something greater in the future if you do something to it, that you can look at it that way if you want, but I wouldn't want you to. I would want you to judge the property in the as-is condition. What is it worth today? And based upon your business model, set your percentages or your minimums based upon that number. And although 290 and 180 is a long way apart, 110, it isn't necessarily that far apart if your house needs that new roof, needs all those upgrades and modernization. And so if you took your property back to the as-is value, I bet that would clarify anybody's opinion of someone being unethical. Now let's talk about ethics for a second. Who sets value in a real estate transaction? At the core of this concern, we have to answer that question. Who sets value? Does the seller set value? Does the buyer set value? does the market set value? Who sets the value? Well, a lot of folks say the buyer sets value and we are the buyer. So in that case, if we determine we can only pay $180,000 for a house that will be worth $290 ARV, then our value is $180. No one can argue with that. So let's assume for a second the market says it's worth $290 as an ARV. But what's the market? Is the market buying it? Are people lining up in line like they do at the caucuses and the voting and wanting to cast their ballot? No. You're the only one there, no matter, irrespective of what the market tells you. You're the only one there with money. And I would challenge that realtor. Mr. and Mrs. Realtor, if you think it's worth so much more money, put your money up or shut your mouth. And most likely they will be quiet. Now, I wouldn't be so forceful, maybe. Maybe I would. But we can't let the market decide for us because the market's not buying the house. So let's look at the seller for a second. Is the seller setting value? The seller set the value. You know what she said? She said, I'll take your $180,000. I'm fine with that. So now you have two extremes in the middle. Your one is the buyer who says, to me, it's worth $180. You have a seller who says, I'm fine with $180. It's all it's worth to me. And you have this middle thing, this gossipy thing, this obnoxious opinion thing, who's not doing anything except complaining. Stop the complaining, you guys in the middle. A buyer and a seller decide on what something's worth to each party. And when they agree, no one should complain. Now, you have to be careful and considerate and ethical when you deal with someone that may be an age that age requires them to have more protection than another age. So you have to be careful and conscientious of the elder abuse laws. So here's what you do. I'm getting fired up. You ask the seller, Mr. Seller, is there anybody that I can have you ask or that you can ask to join us on the conversation to talk about me buying your house for $180,000? I want to make sure. Now, you sound like you have your wits amongst you, and you're just charming and you're intelligent. I'm not saying anything negative about you. I just want to make sure. I don't want anybody to ever say that I did anything wrong. So if you can have maybe a relative, one of your children, maybe a sister, brother, maybe your pastor or preacher or a good friend, good neighbor, someone that can sit in on our negotiation and help you understand what's going on. And then go back and, say, hey, 4 o'clock today, I'll come back when that person's here. And so here's what happened. And I don't have an issue with this, okay? I really don't. I don't have an issue with it at all. I didn't set the sales price. The neighbor was on the market for $179, and the seller wanted to sell me their house for less than $20, and she was, grandma age, and so I said, who do you know? Can you call a family member? Is someone? She said, my son can be here. I said, great. When can your son be here? 4 o'clock. Went back out there at 4 o'clock, knocked on the door, stepped back 6 feet, looked up the street so they could be comfortable and confident in who I am. Opens the door and he says, I can't believe. Well, first of all, I introduced myself as Michael Quarles. I buy houses. I'm here to buy your mom's house. And he says, I can't believe you're paying my mom that much money. I can't believe you're buying my mom's house. I can't believe, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for buying my mom's house. And I thought he was crazy. But I knew he wasn't, because he said this was the last thing my mom needed to sell in order to move in to our home. We want our mom to live with us. And she wanted enough money to buy furniture for her bedroom. Where in the heck is the unethical part? Am I, as a buyer, am I supposed to tell a seller, stop it? Am I supposed to tell the son who wants mom to live with him to stop it? What did I do wrong? Where was the ethical issue there? So, I was satisfied. I did not negotiate it down. She set the price. I agreed to the price. I just happened to say, so you're saying if I could give you that amount of money, you'd sell me the house. I'm not saying I can, but if I could, you would? She said yes. Make sure that someone else was there to make sure that she understood what she was doing. It's okay. I've had people wonder how I do what I do. And I tell them what I do is solve problems. I'm not taking advantage of anybody. I'm solving their problem. It fits within my business model. I tell every one of my students, every one of my coaching students, and I tell them this thing, and every time. I will teach you how to negotiate to get a lower price. I will not teach you how to negotiate lower than 50 cents on the dollar, unless it's such a small deal that you have to. So if you got a $400,000 house, and I am not going to teach someone to get it or buy it for less than $200. So if someone wanted, $325, I'm not going to teach someone how to keep going below 50 cents on the dollar. I'm not going to do it. So that's my minimum threshold. That's it. That's where I'm going to be. I like 60, 65 cents. Sometimes we need the 50 cents because of the size of the deal. It's what our business model calls for. As long as we're adhering to a business model, a predetermined, gross profit model, and not just going out there on a whim and going, let's see what I can do. Let's see how much money I can make today. How many people I can take advantage of today, then we're fine. Now, if we're going to go out there and just beat people up verbally, cause them to sell us their property for less than they should by things that we say, well, shame on us. Now, I have absolutely, I'm going to raise my hand, I've absolutely given people more for their house than they needed or wanted because of their circumstance. This mother who wanted to live with her sons, that wasn't one of those circumstances. But we've got to be careful. So ethics. I guess as people must answer for yourself if you're staying within those boundaries. Because only you know, kind of thing. I don't care what anybody else believes or thinks. And it really just irks the crap out of me when someone wants to give me their opinion but won't get inside and help the person that they're giving me their opinion about. You think it's unethical for me to buy a house at 55 cents or 60 cents on the dollar, but where's your money? Why aren't you helping them? No, you can't help them. All you can do is complain. Well, get out of the way. Understand what we do. And you know what? This is just, you good guy. I do give to people. As a real estate investor, it's awesome being a real estate investor, helping people. I bought 17 cars for people I knew and didn't know who needed a car to drive. How many of those people who are complaining that we buy houses too inexpensively and we're taking advantage of people, how many of them have bought cars for people they didn't know? Unless you can live and walk in my shoes, do not complain about my path. because I am responsible as a real estate investor. And if you're a responsible real estate investor, you just tell them to get lost. You know what you're doing. You know you're doing something right. Great question. Thanks for firing me up. I needed to be fired up.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we are back in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, Mike, Dan Crow just had a couple of questions for you regarding this podcast here. When you're buying out of state, are you actually paying or spending dollars on a BPO appraisal before you acquire the property? And are you actually, or I guess my question is, are you wholesaling these properties out of state, or are you actually closing on the deals, fixing them up and reselling, or are you just wholesaling them? And if you're wholesaling them, are you spending money on BPOs and appraisals prior to committing to the deal? And then secondly, does your agent, if you're wholesaling the deal out of state, do you get any resistance from the agent about putting your property on the MLS if you haven't actually closed and taken title to the property? Do you get any resistance there? How do you get around that with the agent? Thanks.
Hey, Dan, great questions. Thank you. And we need to chat more often. I've missed talking to you. You're a good man. First part of your question, do I get a BPO and an appraisal prior to giving my money away? Yes. Irrespective of if it's a wholesale or a hotel deal, I am going to order a BPO. And the cycle or the string of events there is try to order the BPO. So if I can't find an agent to do the BPO, we're going to kick the deal, because that's telling me it's an area of town, it's an area of the country that I'm going to have also a hard time finding a buyer. Because if I can't find someone to try to sell it for me, unlikely, very, very unlikely that I'm going to find a buyer to buy it. But if I order a BPO and they're $150, I use a national company, $150, get that BPO back. If it comes in at value or the as-is value, and the pictures represent the pictures that I received when we talked to them the first time that they sent us. Because the BPO is an interior BPO, it's just not an exterior; it's an interior as well. So we're going to obtain a lot of information from the agent on that BPO. If it comes back at value, then I'm going to hire a home inspector and inspect the property. I want to determine what the repairs may be, what the anything that I have to mitigate from a resale perspective. Do I have to look at the roof? Do I have to look at the air conditioning? Do I have to look at termite issues? What are the health and safety items on a home inspection that'll present itself or themselves? If that comes back within reason of the number that I've allocated for repairs, because we always allocate money, we ask the seller, what they think, but then we're always taking a value based upon our conversation. And if anybody wants to know how to do all of that, gosh, got to get in the coaching program. We'll teach you how to do all that. So that comes back at, let's say that comes back and it's out of line. It's completely out of line. At that point, we're going to try to renegotiate the contract, taking into consideration that we and the seller thought one value for repairs, but we've determined through this inspection that we were wrong, or the seller was wrong in what they led us to believe. and that give them the opportunity to reduce their price. I guess we would do that too on the BPO if it came back lower, so we'd renegotiate at that point too. But so we try to renegotiate, and then if we can't, we kick it. If it comes back clean within the number that we've allocated for repairs, then I'm going to hire an appraiser and do a full-blown appraisal. I'm not going to lead the appraiser, and I'm not going to give them a copy of my contract. Most appraisers will want a copy of the agreement to sell. No, not going to do it. I do not want to lead them into an opinion. So they're going to do that, right? And I understand that when I do it this way, I may get a lower value than I could have gotten had I led them. I understand that. But I want a really blind appraisal. That almost seems weird to say, because you don't want your appraiser blind. You just want them not knowing what you're trying to achieve. And much like a refinance appraisal, but I wouldn't necessarily tell them it's like a refinance appraisal. I just want an appraisal on the property. What would it be worth? And naturally, they know I'm a buyer because they know who the owner is. They're setting the appointment up with the owner, and they know I'm a buyer, so they know it's a transaction from a sales perspective. But again, I'm not leading them. Appraisal comes back. It is the final determining factor on whether or not I'm going to buy. So if it comes back clean and within reason on the numbers, I already know what the agent thought. I already know what the home inspector thought. But if it comes back clean within the numbers, I'm saying I'm following forward. Again, if it comes back dirty and low, then I'm going to renegotiate with the seller. And as I've said before, if it comes back low and the seller doesn't want to renegotiate, but wants a copy of my appraisal, they don't get it. So if they want it, they have to pay me, the $400 or so that it cost me to appraise the property. Nothing's for free. And yeah, at this point, I will have spent $1,000 on the property. However, the upside is so great, and the potential downside is so great. I can justify that $1,000. And for little mini itty bitty deals like you're buying a $10,000, $15,000 house, I wouldn't do the appraisal because I know the BPO is going to be. There's not enough upside or downside in that to spend the money on the appraisal, but I'd do the other two. As far as putting it in the MLS as a wholesale, and again, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take these 3 steps, BPO, home inspection, appraisal, whether it's a wholesale deal or a hotel deal. But on a wholesale deal, I'm not going to put it in the MLS. So, and if it is in the MLS, then it's probably not going to be a wholesale deal. So, in fact, if anybody needs or would like to see the inventory, because we offer all of our properties available as a wholesale, because I can't buy them all, unfortunately. You can see that, and gosh, where it is on the site, I don't know. But if you'd like it, just send a note to support@michaelquarles.com, and they'll forward it to the appropriate people who will forward back to you how to look at the inventory. But it's a wholesale deal. It's not gonna go on the MLS. I don't have that issue. However, you bring up a really important question as it pertains to wholesaling. Do we get any pushback from agents in the local marketplace when we want to put a property on the MLS as a wholesale deal? And that's absolutely true. We do. They do not understand the guidelines that are set by the Multiple Listing Service, or NAR, National Association of Realtors. And also their broker won't allow them in most cases to deviate from what broker's normal is, even though they can legally put it in the MLS. That's not a broker norm, so sometimes they give us some pushback on that. But there's things that you can do to get it in the MLS. There are flat fee listing companies, although I'm not a big fan of them always. Sometimes, real hot markets, I'm a fan of them, but in slow markets, I'm absolutely not a fan unless that's the only way I can get the house on the MLS. And the reason for that, by the way, is agents that list properties have to also add within the listing for other agents to see the scope of services, the amount of work that the agent who's taken the listing is going to perform. And if they say entry only, which is what a flat fee listing is, then the agent who's selling it or representing the buyer understands that they're going to have to do both sides of the disclosures. Although they're only representing one side, they'll be doing twice as much paperwork. And in those cases, you should offer compensation to them so that they can justify for themselves to actually do two times the paperwork. I'm not saying giving 6% to somebody, but I guess that wouldn't be a bad thing, because if I'd give 6% to two people, might as well, I could justify it. So you should always increase the percentage on a flat fee listing to the selling side and make it valuable for them to sell it to you. The other thing you can do, there's some national companies that are flat fee, open listing kind of things where they'll help you and assist you in selling your property, and that they can also try to sell it. And if they sell it, of course, then they're going to have a commission due to them. So there's some ways to get not around it, because there's nothing to get around. It's just getting on the MLS. But I think that's when those relationships are really important. The nice thing, I'm going to fall back to the BPO. The nice thing about the BPO is when that agent goes out there to look at the property, even though they're charging us $150 to give us that information, now we know who we're going to have list our property. Because the BPO agent is typically an REO agent who is used to dealing with properties that need considerable maintenance. So they've had some deferred maintenance issues, run down, broken down kind of houses, because that's what the bank house inventory looks like. So that's what an REO is. It's a piece of property owned by a bank, and they deal with that type of property. They deal with those buyers as well. So it's a good way to find your agent. So and I'm not ever going to try to, like, if I have you list it, can I get my $150 back? No, I mean, I'm not going to play that game. It's not even worth the conversation. This has been fun. This is a new way. If I get more of these, we'll do more of these audio podcasts, for lack of better words. But it's been fun. And remember, if you want to get in the coaching program, it's $247 a month for 6 months, or $11.97 one-time fee. We have 3 classes a week, and then we meet individually as well. And bunch of stuff to learn, bunch of stuff to listen to and watch. But I think those classes are important because they're question and answer, they're deal analysis, putting deals together, and then they're different various topics that we're going to cover. And I think all those things are important, and then hold you accountable as well, which is the individual call. And so if you've thought about getting into real estate, or you want to just learn a little bit more, or learn the way that I do it, that's absolutely the best opportunity for you. Until next time, talk to you guys then. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.